Busted inside the 20 and the 10, and look at that, he hurdles his way into the...
Hello, everybody. Oh my gosh. Welcome to 49ers University, Episode 6. I'm your host, Ben Meyerson. I'm joined by my guy, Vinny Saglimbeni. It's been an interesting night. It's been an interesting few days for the 49ers, I will say, though, but a lot going on, obviously, in the world. We're going to keep you distracted from that, hopefully, though, for the next hour. There's been a lot going on. Adam Schefter, I believe, was it yesterday or the day before? I can't even keep track of this right now. Went on a PFF podcast and essentially said that, hey, it's not a lock that the 49ers are going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. And even mentioned this, Vinny, and we'll certainly get into it later, that specifically they could receive a third-round compensatory pick if Jimmy Garoppolo leaves the team in free agency next season. So that's an interesting part of that discussion, Vinny, and we'll certainly get into all of that. But first things first, everybody, if you haven't, subscribe already to my YouTube channel. Tonight, I will be on with Amin the Dream in about 2-3 hours from now, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that as well. But if you haven't already, go follow my guy Vinny on Twitter. Follow me as well. We have all of our links in the description below. We got to start with the quarterback position, though, because it seems like that's what we're going to be talking about until the 49ers come out and say, we love Trey Lance, he's starting, we hate Jimmy Garoppolo. Vinny, is Trey Lance ready to start for the 49ers?
He better be. I think there's, and I mean that in a good way, right? Like, there's an expectation that comes with being the third overall pick in the draft. So we've been making this argument that he should have started all of last year, and we talked about our expectations for him last week in our last show, which was, at least in my opinion, it was essentially just to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo in every single stat, and the 49ers have to be better than whatever team Garoppolo allegedly goes to. So, yes, I think he is ready, but I think he has to be ready in the sense that, again, he's the number 3 overall pick. There's just been a lot of hype around Trey Lance, especially from 49er Twitter, and the lack of hype that was surrounded around Jimmy Garoppolo last year. And when you're a top 3 pick in the draft, the expectation is you should be ready to play day one. And whether he was or wasn't, right now he has to be ready. And I think he is, just because, and like, I think in this system as well, I think he'll be more ready and not have as much drawbacks as I think people think he might have. And there's not much that he would really have to change in terms of, there's not much Kyle Shanahan really has to change in call plays. You can literally call the same plays that you did last year and have those different results that come with Trey Lance playing. So yes, I think he's ready. I think he kind of has to be ready. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where those dips and like high points and low points come in those first few weeks.
So the question is Trey Lance ready to start for the 49ers? I would say he's been ready to start for the 49ers. He just hasn't gotten the opportunity to start yet. And I think, Vinny, ultimately that's the reason why people are going and saying, hey, Trey Lance isn't ready. It's because, one, they're being lazy, honestly. I think it's a lazy take to have. But two, you can't disprove that Trey Lance is ready or is not ready. There's no amount of evidence that you can show to someone that would sway them one way or the other, that could convince them that they think Trey Lance is the guy. I think for me, Vinny, the reason I'm so really excited and optimistic about Trey Lance and believe he can start right away, and he should have started this past year already, is because of his mobility. I think, for one, this past season, the 49ers were top 5 in rushing attempts, right? But they were 16th in the league in yards per attempt, middle of the pack. That is not where the 49ers need to be. Just by playing Trey Lance as your starting quarterback, you're instantly going to make your rushing attack better, just with his presence alone. I mean, we talk so much about how it's going to be 11 on 11 football, but Garoppolo was just a non-factor in the run game. He was not accounted for. So when you add someone else that defenses have to account for, it certainly should make the running attack better, even if Trey Lance isn't the one who's rushing the ball as often. In terms of the passing game, though, this is something interesting I've been thinking about, Vinny, with Lance's mobility specifically, is that he just has a much higher margin for error than Jimmy Garoppolo does, meaning that if Trey Lance doesn't get the initial read right on a play, if he doesn't get that quick read right away, how it's supposed to be designed, the way Kyle wants it to be, he can still make a play beyond that. He can go outside the pocket, keep the play going, and make an off-schedule play downfield like he did so many times in that Houston Texans game especially. So
Yeah.
I think when you take that into consideration, and then the fact of that how much Jimmy Garoppolo was getting sacked when he was under pressure, how often, when teams would get home, they would get to Jimmy. It's almost double the rate that Trey Lance was getting sacked at when under pressure. So I think, for one, look, I don't think Trey Lance is going to improve or just be as good as Jimmy Garoppolo has been in terms of the third down efficiency. I think that's something that's going to be really tough to replicate, and I don't expect him to. But what I do expect is more explosive plays downfield, bigger chunk plays, 20, 30, 40-yard plays. And Trey Lance, because of his physical traits, is going to change the geometry of this offense. He's going to stretch it out in a way that they just haven't been able to these past 4 years with Jimmy Garoppolo, because he is limited and he is just not willing to take those downfield shots the way that Shanahan wants his players to, especially if you go back, Vinny, to that 2016 offense he had with Matt Ryan. Everything he was doing then, he just hasn't been able to do everything he's been wanting to do within the full scope of the offense. So I think you hit it on the nail on the head, though, is that with the 49ers next season, they don't have to overhaul their offense. In fact, I think they could keep about 90 to 95% of what they have in place and really just add quarterback runs to it, because Shanahan already has these built-in shots to take downfield. He has these go routes to take. He has all these things in place, but Jimmy Garoppolo was just not taking those plays when they were there. So when you add Trey Lance into the mix, I think he's going to do that. And then in terms of running the ball, that's another thing that I think people have a slight misconception about. The real 49ers fans, I think, understand what they're trying to do with Trey Lance, which is they're going to run the ball as much as they did before with Jimmy Garoppolo. In fact, they might run the ball even more than they did with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think some, because the 49ers lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, people have this idea that they want to go out and get their Patrick Mahomes, that they want to go out and get their guy who can sling it for them 40, 45, 50 times a game. I just don't think that's the case. And I think the really great thing for Trey Lance is that right away, at least, he can naturally progress into all of these different things, right? It doesn't have to be a thing where you just throw him off the deep end right away and he's running every single play in the playbook. No, he can do what they've been doing this past season and really just expand on it with his scrambling ability, expand on it with some QB runs. And you don't even have to do anything crazy, Vinny, right? You can add some read mode, some zone reads in there. You can add some QB draws, and really, I mean, beyond that, of course, Kyle can get a little creative with the motion, moving guys around and all that stuff. But this offense, I think, is going to look very similar to what we've seen these past few years, at least in terms of play calling.
Yeah, and people are talking too about, I think, one free agent that I think people want to see on the 49ers is Cordell Patterson.
Yes.
And I think that intention obviously is good, and no one's going to say no to a guy like Cordell Patterson. That's just another weapon that you would have to add to this offense. But I think with the play calling stuff, and you talked about, Patrick Mahomes and trying to find that next Mahomes, I think a lot of people are trying to find that next Chiefs offense. And I think you kind of see that with the Bengals a little bit with some of the guys that they drafted and the guys that they have. I don't think the 49ers necessarily need to do that. I think they have some of those guys in the building already to where they can make their own. But I think they could make a team where they're going to try to run this 49ers offense with a guy like Trey Lance and running backs that they got with the other different tools that they can use. So with that, I think there's Shanahan, as we've seen, he was putting up numbers with Nick Mullins.
Yeah.
He was getting what's that one crazy stat he's in the same conversation with Andrew Luck and Patrick Mahomes and passing yards in a certain amount of games or something like that.
In his first 13 starts, he's third behind Patrick Mahomes and Andrew Luck in terms of passing yards.
So if he can do that with Nick Mullins, God bless him, right? If he can do that with him, imagine what he can do with Trey Lance, especially in that running game. And I want to see more bootlegs as well. I don't think we were able to see that as much. I think even just the little subtleties that we may not think that we didn't see, I think those will be put back into this system even more so. And you talk about Matt Ryan, there could be a potential RG3 rookie or kind of offense with that. You combine that with the play of RG3 and Trey Lance compared to the offensive scheme of that 2016 team. I think this could really form into this 2022 Niner offense that could do some real good damage in the season next year.
Yeah, and I think the main thing for me, Vinny, is that Kyle Shanahan has no more excuses, right? I think we've given him the benefit of the doubt in recent years for some of the offensive woes, especially the playoffs this past season, right? Oh, he has Jimmy Garoppolo. He can only do so much. Well, now Kyle has his guy. Kyle has the guy who he handpicked as his quarterback, the guy who he traded up all the assets for in the world. And they have the team around it to make it work too, right? You have Debo in place. You have all these weapons to where there's no more excuses. And I think this 49ers offense should be one of the best in the league, and it should be one of Kyle Shanahan's best, if not his best offense ever. And I don't think that's overzealous by any means, but we do need to talk about the quarterback who still is on the 49ers roster. That's Jimmy Garoppolo. Tim Kawakami was on The Athletic talking about he thinks that the Steelers will trade 2 fourth-round picks for Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason. Vinny, what do you think about that? And then, well, first off, what do you think about the Steelers as a destination? And then what do you think about the value?
I think the Steelers, I think, are in a way in a similar position to the Niners in terms of how their team is built and kind of things like that. They have their own set of weapons that can be served as a threat to defenses. You talk about potentially getting back Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. That's a pretty decent receiving core that you got there, as well as Najee Harris as well. Kind of that bell cow running back that they can rely on, and they got a couple guys back there as well. And then you talk about that defense as well with some of the stars that they have. I think it's a very similar team build. I think the Niners are obviously have a better roster and have more depth. But I think in terms of if that is a good destination for him, I think so. I don't know. I think it'll be tougher for him to win in that division more so than, say just for the sake of the argument, he were to stay in the NFC West. But because I don't know how good the Browns will be, and I think we saw the Bengals. I don't know if they'll be able to repeat with the success that they had. So maybe it turns out to be a little bit easier. But I think that's one of his better options in like for Garoppolo's standpoint. I think that's a better option compared to like, Washington or something like that. Like having that winning culture that is the Steelers. Like, and I think being in that culture would be good for him. And it's kind of a tougher city, and I think what people may look at Garoppolo playing through that injury as like kind of like embodying that a little bit. And I know people have questions about his toughness and things like that, but that could just be something that they look at. In terms of the value, I think that's a fair value. I mean, I don't know how much you can really get more. Maybe you change one of those fourths to a third or a second. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near a first. If they do get a first somehow, some way, that's a good trade. But I think 2 fourth rounders are just fair, just because of that inconsistency on the field, as well as, like I just mentioned, the injuries. I think that leaves a little bit of doubt potentially for teams looking to trade for him. And you look at the record, obviously on paper it looks good, but maybe teams are like NFL. There are some NFL teams that are just like aren't smart, but the majority of them, like the Steelers, are a smart organization. And I think, not to say that it would be dumb for them to trade for Garoppolo, but I think they're going to look into the context behind those wins, and more so than I think a lot of other teams would. So, but I don't know what other options that they have, though. I mean, maybe you wait and maybe you wait in the draft, because they don't have the highest pick. I mean, but they also, because they were were they in the playoffs? They were the 7th seed, right?
No, they did not. I don't think they made
miss?
I think they missed. Oh, they either missed. No,
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 they did make.
They did
They
make
did
it.
make it.
They were the 7th seed. They played.
Oh, they played the Chiefs. They played the Chiefs, and they got killed by
Right.
the Chiefs. So it's like, I mean, so it's not the highest pick. That's the point. It's not the highest pick. So like,
But they are in
up.
striking distance, though, Vinny. That is the one thing.
Yeah.
Is they're not so far off. Whereas like Washington, right, last season they had the 20th overall pick. They couldn't go all the way up to 11th to try and get Justin Fields. I think the Steelers, I believe, are around pick 16. So that's at least a little easier in terms of trying to go up and strike for that quarterback. So in terms of the Steelers being a destination for Jimmy Garoppolo, I think it's fair to think that they could be a potential destination. I just don't know how much I buy it, because like you said, the Steelers will look into the context of the wins that the 49ers got, how far they went into the playoffs. And I think for Mike Tomlin, we discussed this before, Vinny, he's so locked into that Steelers team for the long term, and they've been so focused on building this team the right way. And I'm not sure just getting that quick, easy fix is going to be the solution for them at quarterback. It seems like, if anything, they want that project at quarterback, that next guy who they can rely on for the next 10 or 15 years. They've really been looking for that person for the last 3 or 4 seasons, ever since it's been pretty obvious that Ben Roethlisberger was going to retire soon. So, look, could they go after Jimmy Garoppolo? Could he be their bridge quarterback if they, say, select a Malik Willis or a Matt Corral or a Kenny Pickett? Sure. I could definitely see it playing out that way. And if it is that situation, 2 fourth rounders, I think that's a very fair price for Jimmy Garoppolo. And one other thing I did see in terms of the value, Vinny, was that Tim Kawakami said it could either be 2 fourth round picks, I believe, or it could be a 4th round pick that could potentially turn into a 2nd or a 3rd round pick if Jimmy Garoppolo stays healthy, if they make the playoffs and all that sort of thing, similar to Carson Wentz last season. So I think this was fair compensation for Jimmy, but at the same time, like we talked about, Vinny, are the Steelers really a team that is fully bought in on the Jimmy Garoppolo experience? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And if they are going to be, it doesn't seem like he's their first option by any means.
Yeah, and that was going to be my point. I don't think this is. I think they're looking for the Russell Wilson, the Aaron Rodgers, or the Deshaun Watson. But if they don't like any guys in the draft and they decide that this is the next best option, then I think they may go and try to get Jimmy, because Jimmy's not particularly he's not young, but he's also not very he's not old enough to where teams may not be a little like if things go well for him, Jimmy would be in the league for another 6, 7, maybe 8 years. But will the Steelers be like, this is the guy that we want for that set amount of time? Probably not. But assuming that they trade him, maybe if they do trade him and he's there for a year, then maybe you get him on a restructured deal for 2 more years, and then he just kind of starts to bounce around maybe a little bit. But that's something to also kind of think about as well.
Yeah, and I guess the one other thing I wanted to touch on here with this whole Steelers situation is that maybe they just look at Jimmy and say, hey, we do want to draft that young guy. We want to bring that next guy in. We know Jimmy's not going to be that guy, but we can't bring Jimmy in because he gets hurt too often. We can't rely on him to be our starter for a full season, even if we expect to do the same thing that the 49ers did last season. So it just depends on what the Steelers want out of this situation. I could certainly see it playing out where they go after Jimmy Garoppolo because there are no other options available to them. There just isn't a better option. But then, in that same sense, Vinny, there are a lot of free agent quarterbacks who are going to be available this offseason. Jameis Winston is one of those quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater is one of those quarterbacks. I believe Gardner Minshew is one of those quarterbacks. There are going to be options that are pretty damn close to Jimmy anyways, and they're going to be a hell of a lot cheaper for the Steelers to bring in. So it just depends on how they value Jimmy Garoppolo. And look, maybe they're interested in that cap space in the future, right? They bring Jimmy in for $25 million for this year, then they let him go in free agency, and that's a big chunk of cap space that you're able to clear to spend on your next quarterback to put a better team around him. So we'll see what the Steelers want, but I certainly don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities right now.
No, I don't think so. And I think other teams are kind of having these conversations as well, potentially looking for Jimmy G.
Absolutely. And in terms of free agency for the Niners, we're going to shift that way a little bit now. 2 players that are really on the top of the free agent list are going to be DJ Jones and Laken Tomlinson. In fact, my prediction, Vinny, is they'll be the most expensive free agents that the 49ers are going to have is unrestricted guys this offseason.
And to clarify on that point, for those who are listening that may be confused, Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa are not free agents. They are still on the roster. They're still under contract, so those extensions do not count as retaining more expensive free agents because they're not free agents.
Yep. And with DJ Jones and Laken Tomlinson, they're unrestricted. They are free to go negotiate with any other team. And I think they're going to be expensive players for the 49ers. So I think people have been discussing, hey, maybe they should keep one or the other. But to me, the real question, Vinny, is can they retain either of these guys?
That's going to be the question. I think there's a way to do it, but there's just a lot of other steps that would have to go first in order for them to decide whether they can keep one, keep both, or not keep either. And no, there was even with Garoppolo on the roster, there's a way to free up some cap space in terms of restructuring people's contracts. And there's a lot of contracts that you would have to restructure to kind of get to that point. But I think some of the people were like Jimmy Ward, restructuring Eric Armstead restructuring his contract.
So I actually saw today on Over the Cap that they can extend Jimmy Ward and save about $6.5 million, and they can restructure Eric Armstead and save about 9.5, close to 10. So collectively, if they do those 2 moves, which really are the 2 main restructure extension moves besides Deebo and Nick Bosa, they could save around $16-15 million. So that could certainly be enough.
And that's before potentially moving off of D Ford as well. If you move off D Ford, you save was it 7?
Yeah, the D Ford situation is tricky though because they can cut him prior to the start of free agent or at the start of the new league year and save $2 million. But if they wait until after June 1st, they can save an additional 5 on top of that, so 7 in total.
So
But
so say they do that. That's like 23 plus the 27 that you're saving from Garoppolo. That's 50, right? That you're looking around like 48 to 50 that you could potentially use to like get some guys back, and maybe like 20 of that is going to Debo, maybe 20
right.
plus some other money that they're getting. So it's a lot of different aspects that you have to kind of take into consideration
Realistically,
here. But
Vinny, I would say if they make the 3 main moves we talked about, Garoppolo, Jimmy Ward, and Armstead, because they're in negative cap space right now, actually, I believe that would put them around 38 to 35 to 40 million, depending on other ancillary moves they make that they have decisions on. But again, even if they clear up all that money, Vinny, let's say they have $40 million to spend in free agency, I still don't believe they'll be able to retain DJ Jones or Laken Tomlinson because they have 33 players who are free agents this offseason. They have lots of exclusive rights free agents, guys like Jawan Jennings, guys like Kevin Givens, restricted free agents even. So I think DJ Jones is one of those pieces that looking at it from a value perspective, I just don't think the 49ers can afford to keep him because they've proven season after season that they can produce those DJ Jones types. That Chris Kosaric, given any resources available to him, the 5th round, the 6th round, undrafted guys, the bargain bin of free agency, guys who teams have already passed up on and don't believe in anymore, they can absolutely produce those guys with DJ Jones. I think if anything, the person who they'd be clearing that space for is Laken Tomlinson because the interior of the offensive line for this team is a real big question mark to me right now, Vinny. I think if you look, Laken Tomlinson could obviously leave in free agency. He's an unrestricted free agent. Alex Mack talked about the fact that he could decide to retire this offseason and that any offseason from here on out, he could just sit down and this could be it for him. Even then, on the right side of the offensive line, Daniel Brunskill, I think, is a free agent too. So you don't have any guarantee that you'll bring back any of your 3 starters for the interior of the offensive line, which is really scary. So I don't think they actually bring back either of these players, though. Shout out to Amin the Dream. What's up? How you doing? But I don't think they'll be able to bring back DJ Jones or Laken Tomlinson, even though I think they're high on the priority list. The 49ers just have too many free agents to bring back. And when you're talking about bringing back Laken Tomlinson, Vinny, it's going to be a very high number for him. It's not going to be cheap. It is going to be $10+ million minimum, if not more than that. Then when you take into consideration the fact that they will probably likely extend at least Debo this offseason, Nick Bosa said they could potentially wait till next offseason for if they really wanted to. But let's say they only, extend Debo Samuel this offseason. That's another chunk of money, and it's not a lot of money because for that first year, you can only do so much, and it's really your bonus more than anything. It would be likely 6 to 8, even $10 million is the maximum that number hits. But point being, 49ers are not going to have a lot of easy decisions to make. It's going to be really tough. And Amin asked the key question right here, which is they have to re-sign Laken Tomlinson. Who's going to play left guard? I would tell you if the 49ers let go of Laken Tomlinson, they don't pursue him, right? Because we don't know what their priorities are right now, Vinny. We're only guessing, obviously. No. But if they do just let Laken go, to me, it's a clear and obvious declaration that they think Aaron Banks is that guy for them. They're comfortable with him starting at left guard because I always thought that situation was strange, Vinny. They drafted him as a right guard. Everyone really talked about him as Laken Tomlinson's replacement because that's what he played all of college. And then he doesn't play at all for the 49ers. I think they're setting him up to be Laken Tomlinson's replacement. And I can really see that playing out. And I think, look, I would love to bring back Laken Tomlinson, but if they're comfortable with Aaron Banks starting at left guard, go and bring in a premium center if Alex Mack retires. Go and bring in a starting level right guard, someone who's better than Daniel Brunskill, someone who's an upgrade. You at least need to balance out the depth of the offensive line because I think right now their 2 tackle spots are figured out I mean, people say what they will about Mike McGlinchey. They're going to stick with him no matter what. And I think even beyond those 2 tackle spots, Vinny, Colton McKivitz, Jalen Moore, they have options at those spots. They don't have to worry about the depth there. What they should be really worrying about is the depth if at their guard, at their center spot, because if they lose any one of those guys, it is, I'm not going to say game over, but it makes life incredibly hard for Trey Lance.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think with the Alex Mack stuff, I think is a little interesting just because you don't really know what he's going to do. And that kind of just like throws off a little bit what. And it's not like a Joe Staley situation where he's going to like work with the team to try to figure out that next plan. Just because.
Well, I actually think, Vinny, from what I remember in his press conference, he wouldn't say he would work with the 49ers, but I think what he told the media was he understood the business of football and that he would time it out in a way so that he wouldn't just throw the 49ers under the bus.
Yeah, but that's still not the same as like what they were doing with Joe Staley and getting Trent Williams and that kind of thing. That's not the same in that kind of way. So that's something interesting to look at. And I think Brunskill could be kind of like they do decide to keep him. He's kind of more of like that swing guy. So maybe he moves over to the left with Trent Williams and then you put Aaron Banks at right guard. It's something that they got to figure out. And I think the easy solution is just to try to retain Laken Tomlinson if you can. And like if you had to pick between like one of these guys, Tomlinson or Jones, I think Jones is going to be the guy that more likely would go somewhere else because, or like the 49ers may be more willing to like release. And I don't know if they want to in the first place. I don't think they do, but it's just, there's just so much depth in that position. It's a financial thing. DJ Jones would be getting more money as well than,
oh yeah,
like what he would potentially be getting here. But
well, and Vinny, also people forget about Javon Kinlaw, right? I mean, the 49ers
exactly.
are going to want to play that dude next season. And I think, look, no matter what, DJ Jones is who I'd be most comfortable with letting go out of anyone, because at the end of the day, the 49ers have proven they can produce that position if they need to. They can go anywhere. What they haven't proven is they can build a long-term functioning offensive line. And that's the one thing that I worry about the most. And that's why I would prioritize Laken over DJ Jones. And I think most people are in agreement on that, even though Tomlinson is going to be more expensive. But still, if the 49ers are comfortable with Aaron Banks at left guard, I think you have to let go of Laken Tomlinson, unfortunately, just because of the money. It's not a situation where, hey, we could just bring back Lake and it's going to be easy. No. It's going to affect your long-term salary cap, and it's going to affect your ability down the line to retain some of the key players that you drafted, like Brandon Ayuk potentially, right? So I think they have to be smart about this, but hey, I think it really all hinges on how they feel about Aaron Banks, and we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll just see how they do based off what they do in free agency, because they just let Laken go and it's $9-10 million. It's a number they probably could have matched. That means they have a lot of confidence in Aaron Banks. And they certainly spent a high enough pick on him that they should have that confidence. But obviously we haven't seen him. We can't really give any real analysis on Aaron Banks. Although I saw something that someone said where by the end of the season, they thought he was looking skinnier. They felt like his weight was going down a little bit, which is what the 49ers, I believe, wanted. So I don't know what to make of that.
Last time we talked about a Notre Dame. So last time a Notre Dame lineman was losing weight, he got crapped on for the 49ers. For the 49ers, right?
Very different situation, though, I will say.
Yeah, I know. He's more of a tackle, and like guards, you still need to be big, but you don't need to be as big as like a tackle. But I don't know. Plus McGlinchey was playing, and like we haven't really evaluated Aaron Banks yet, so because he hasn't played.
Yeah, it's hard to evaluate him. But let's stick to more free agency. Let's go to running backs this time around, though. 49ers are going to have really two key unrestricted free agent running backs. It's going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. and Raheem Mostert. And I think we all agree that Raheem Mostert is a much better player than Jeff Wilson Jr. But that's not what this discussion is, because in reality, Jeff Wilson Jr. could come back on a very minimal contract with the 49ers, probably a 1 to 2 year deal. under market value. Even I would say Raheem Mostert is a different situation. Obviously, he's coming off the injury. That's going to affect his value. But if there's a team willing to give Raheem Mostert $3, $4, even $5 million a season for a couple seasons, I'm not quite sure the 49ers are going to be willing to match that. So, Vinny, if the situation is, 1 year, sort of minimum, close to minimum deal with Jeff Wilson Jr., or bringing back Raheem Mostert on a bigger deal, where would you want to go in that situation?
I don't think the deal for
Hello
Raheem
from
will be as
Germany,
big.
by the way, man. 49ers worldwide, right? Sorry.
Hello from Germany. Hopefully you're staying safe.
Yeah, please stay safe.
I don't know if that. Sorry to like distract a little bit. I know it hasn't really hit Germany yet, but I mean, with everything going on, we hope that everybody is staying safe during these times and everything like that. But going back to Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, I don't know if that number will be 4 or 5 million for Raheem, because I think he wanted, like, because when he had first kind of requested that trade thing last year, he just wanted the similar, or 2 years ago, he wanted that similar contract to Tevin Coleman, and I think that number was around 2 to 3 million.
I'm getting it up right now.
If I'm not mistaken, it could have been 4 or 5 or something like that. But I think, and I don't think Raheem's going to be asking for that anyway.
So
because
it was about a 4-year average annual per year salary. It's 2 years, 8.5 million, but I believe only 5.5 of that is guaranteed.
Yeah. So I think
that, just to clarify, that was Tevin Coleman's 49ers contract.
Yeah. So I think Raheem got something similar to that deal when he got his extension or whatever it was, restructured, whatever it was. But I don't know if Raheem's going to be asking for that number, because he didn't play last year, and I think other teams maybe if other teams are willing to offer that number, maybe that's where he'll go. And I think he wants to stay with the 49ers. I just get that kind of feeling that he wants to stay with this team in particular. But this is a business in that. But all that is just to say, if there's a way they can keep Raheem Mostert, I think you keep him, just because of his vision and his ability, his breakout speed. You can't teach that speed, and that combined with Elijah Mitchell could be a very interesting tandem there. And I think we talked about guys kind of drafting their replacements. The Niners, they did a lot of that last year, I felt like.
Yeah.
And I think they did that with both of their running backs. I think the Elijah Mitchell was a potential replacement for Raheem Mostert, and I think the draft choice of Trey Sermon is kind of that replacement for Jeff Wilson. So would you rather have, and I guess part of that going in my theory of what I'm thinking is, do I want 2 Raheem Mostert players, or do I want 2 guys that are like Jeff Wilson? And I would lean towards the former, and having 2 guys just with that killer speed, and Raheem Mostert and Elijah Mitchell to have Trey Sermon complement that in case of injury or whatever it may be. Plus, there's a lot more guys that you can get more of that, cowbell, bigger back guys that you can get on the free agent more so than those guys with just that killer speed.
I agree with that, and I think, look, I like a lot of what you're saying. The reason I'm going to say I'd rather go in the Jeff Wilson Jr. direction is because I do think a team is going to offer Raheem Mostert not the money he wants, but they're going to offer him the kind of deal that he's probably been waiting out for his entire career. And I just think he's at the point in his career where if he gets hurt one more time, that's not going to be available again to him. And I'm not even saying that it's guaranteed it is available, but to me, the way I see it is if he gets the right offer from a Miami or let's say a Buffalo or a team like that, why wouldn't he go, man? And I wouldn't blame him to go. And I don't think the 49ers should match him in that situation because they've proven what they can do at the running back position. And I think the reason I'm so interested in bringing back Jeff Wilson Jr. is because I think he is going to be so cheap for the 49ers.
He'll be incredibly cheap. Yeah,
exactly. And by retaining him, you guarantee that depth at that spot. Whereas with Mostert, with his injury concern, he could completely just be out for the entire season next year again, or another injury could pop up, and it could be on and on with Mostert. So to me, the reason I'm going with Jeff Wilson Jr. is because I know what I'm getting out of Jeff Wilson Jr. You know exactly what Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to provide for this team, and I think while Raheem Mostert provides a more explosive option, I would rather see them go into that undrafted free agency pool or go into that 6th, 5th round again and draft someone else. I'm just not a fan of retaining running backs in general, unless we're talking about a Jeff Wilson Jr., where it is going to be so cheap and it's going to be next to nothing to keep him. In general, I just think bringing in new backs, bringing in fresh legs is the way to go. And I think for the 49ers, who are going to be so run-oriented next season, we already talked about how much they're going to want to run the ball with Trey Lance. I think they're going to run the ball at the highest rate in the league next year. And in order to do that, you need quality depth that you can rely on throughout the entirety of the regular season. In a regular season, that's not going to get any shorter from here on out. So I wouldn't – look, I don't think I would be mad if they brought back Raheem Mostert. But in the same sense – Find that next guy at the running back position. Find your next Raheem Mostert or your next Jeff Wilson Jr. Or you know what? You have Trey Sermon, who I thought fell off the face of the earth. Let him play, right? They're going to have options. I think that the reason I'm so quick to say they should get rid of Mostert or at least let him walk is that they've proven their ability to produce that running back position year in and year out. And I think there's just some other spots where they need to focus more resources into and shore them up so that they have quality depth.
And I think I anticipate it not being a long contract for either guy. I think it'd just be like a 1-year thing if you had to keep one of the guys, or maybe two. But I think, because Jeff Wilson has had his own injury scares a little bit as well, that you got to kind of think about. But obviously Mostert's are, more long-term than what Wilson has experienced. So, but they can maybe just decide, hey, we're not going to keep either one of these guys and just make that tandem be Mitchell and Sermon and try to get some more older vets that aren't as good, but like don't have the need to play as much as like a Wilson or a Mostert to kind of fill out those spots as well. Because they still have JaMychal Hasty.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say next, Vinny. JaMychal Hasty, I'm looking right now, I believe he's an exclusive rights free agent. So he's pretty much all but guaranteed to be back on this team next season. Look, I think they'll have options at the running back room. And that's why I think they might not bring back either of these guys. And I could really see that playing out that way. We're going to move on to our next topic real quick. But while we have everyone's attention, make sure you subscribe down below. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video if you're enjoying it. And follow Vinny and I on Twitter. Links are all in the description down below. But we're going to move on to the next topic. And we're going to do a draft now, everybody. I encourage you all to participate in this. Let us know what you think. Who would you take? So this entire offseason, Vinny and I were going to be doing all these drafts. The idea we had for today is we're going to do a fantasy draft similar to, if you're restarting a team in like Madden or a video game like that. If you're the GM of a franchise and you can select any 49ers player to start your team with, who are you selecting and why? And Vinny, I've had the first overall pick the last few times. I'm going to let you pick first today. And the way we're going to do this is Vinny will get the first pick. I will get the 2 picks after him. And then Vinny will pick again. And that will be it for us, guys. But before we get into everything, let us know who you think should be that first player taken. If you're starting in a franchise and you can take any 49ers, you can poach. You're starting your own franchise out in San Diego. Let's just say it's an imaginary team called, I don't know, the Chargers. Just making things up. Vinny, who are you selecting with the first overall pick in this fantasy draft of any 49er?
Yeah, and I think this is very tough, right?
It is.
The Niners have a lot of good players, some really, really good players that I think could be, taken, and some good players are going to be left off. And this may come as a shock to some people, because I'm going to go with an offensive player, and it's not the offensive player that you think it is.
I know where you're going, and I'm going to get so mad about it because I wanted to go that way.
I'm going to pick the best, in my opinion, the best player on the 49ers, and I'm going Trent Williams.
God damn it. I mean,
my number one pick. There is no one.
I really thought I was going to get great value there in the second round, man.
Yeah, I've never seen, as much as I want to say I've never seen anybody like Debo, I truly have never seen anybody as good and as dominant as Trent Williams. That the ability that he has, plus he is by far the best offensive lineman in the league. He's a top 10 player in the league. And I think with that, having that assurance on that left side of my offensive line and not having to worry about literally anybody going on that side, I have to pick Trent Williams.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I'm right there with you. In Bay Area baller, hey, I'm in the same boat. Although I will say, and this is for long.
Trent Williams isn't old.
Trent Williams is not old by any means, and offensive linemen are playing into their 40s now. So I think I'm actually right there with you, Vinny. I wanted Trent Williams to be my pick, and in fact, that's why I deferred to you, man, because I thought I was going to get the easiest selection. I thought you were going to make life a lot easier for me. But no, Trent Williams, look, I think it's an excellent
He's 33.
Pick.
He's 33.
He's newly 33, by the way, I believe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I see Bay Area baller Josh in the comments saying Debo or Bosa. Those are certainly great choices as well. But I think, to me, Trent Williams is that number one guy I would want to build my franchise
he's the best.
around.
I think he's the best player on the team. I really do.
I agree. So next, I got to go with the obvious choice, Debo Samuel. I think.
Yeah.
I think the only concern is really injury concern, and even then, with a player like Debo Samuel, if you have other playmakers around him, I think you hope that can alleviate some of the pressure that you put on a guy like Debo. So while I think Trent Williams is certainly a worthy pick, to me, you're picking between Trent Williams and Debo Samuel. So Debo Samuel has to be.
That's who I was deciding between. Yeah.
Yeah, he has to be that next pick for me. There's no one else I would want to build my offense around in terms of non-quarterbacks in the NFL. I truly believe that. I think he was one of the most valuable players in the league last season. He should have won Offensive Player of the Year, in my opinion, even as good of a season as Cooper Kupp had. But for my next pick, I know there's an easy choice here, and I'm certainly thinking about going with that choice. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna go Nick Bosa, and I think the argument in my mind, it's a little harder than I think people realize, because the 49ers have multiple franchise players all over the field, and at multiple levels too. But how about this, Vinny? Because I think there's a lot of great players on the 49ers. Let's do an extra few picks for both of us. So instead of you ending with the last pick here, I'm going to give you one. How about this? You'll get two more picks, and then I'll select the last pick of the draft. So for everyone keeping up so far, just at home, Trent Williams is the first overall selection in the mock fantasy 49ers draft to go to.
And of course, like, there's no fantasy points for offensive linemen, but but
we're saying fantasy draft in terms of the Madden or 2K when you can do the fantasy leagues where every single player is available. That's what I've been meaning by saying that's, just to clarify. And everyone down below in the comments, let us know who you think is going to be next, because I really hope you don't pick the guy who I was debating between Nick Bosa for, but I think you probably will. So go ahead and make your next selection, Vinny.
So I'm making two picks, right?
You are.
So either of us are going to be left with either two offensive players and one defensive player. or 2 defensive players and 1 offensive player, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we can do this
Okay.
however we want. Take it however you want. Hey,
Okay.
area baller, love the suggestion. I think you should go with that one, Vinny.
No, I was thinking Mitch Wisnowski was on there.
What you're gonna take Mitch over Robbie Gould and Tabor Pepper? I mean, dude, what are you talking about?
Who was the one guy I was talking about last week? Hold on.
Mitch Wisnowski. Freaking 4th round pick on 100. Like I'm just never gonna get over that, man.
I think. Oh, these are some tough decisions here. I'm gonna go. I just don't know if I want 2 defensive players or if I want 2 offensive players. So,
just make your first pick at least, because I think the first one's easy.
you know what? I'm just gonna get my defensive player. I'll go Fred.
Yeah.
I'll go Fred Warner.
And that's what I was debating too.
Yeah,
Nick,
I just think
I almost picked him over Nick Bosa. Honestly,
Yeah,
I really thought about it hard.
And there's no like other like elite corner that's on this team that like I would take, because I think I would take that corner over Fred. Like there's not like a top 5, 10 corner that the 49ers have on their team. Plus there's not that extra like second edge guy that you could really take potentially. Yeah, he's just my leader. I got 2 leaders on my team, just just bona fide people that everyone's gonna listen to on each side of the ball, and just like are just top 5, even top 3 in their position. So going with Fred, and because I think there's a lot more depth in terms of the talent on defense, I'm gonna go offense again, and I'm gonna go for a top 2 player in this position, and I'm gonna pick George Kittle as my other pick.
Fair enough.
So, and Kittle gives me a little bit of everything as well. I know hold on. No, you know what? I'm gonna stick with George, because I was thinking, do I need my quarterback? Because I don't have a quarterback, but
you're not picking either of these quarterbacks.
I think Kittle gives me a little bit of everything. Helps me in the running game. Helps me in the passing game as well. Just a fun guy as well. I need someone to mix it up a little bit. Team guy. Everybody loves him, playing with him. So I'm gonna go with George Kittle. So my 3-man team is Trent Williams, Fred Warner, and George Kittle.
It's a hell of a team to go with. And so far, I've gone with Debo and Bosa. Last pick is available. I'm just going to talk about honorary mentions and players I'm thinking about out loud, since Vinny doesn't have any more picks. To me, the 2 guys I'm thinking about at this moment are Brandon Ayuk and Jimmy Ward. I really think either of those players are very, very worthy of being taken at these spots. But Vinny, I got to go back to this comment Bay Area Baller made. He said, I'm thinking about the long term for my franchise. When I think about the long term for my franchise, I want to get the most important position. That's why I'm picking Trey Lance with my last pick.
That's what I'm saying. You just fooled me. I was thinking about maybe going Trey Lance. But
so my 3-man team is going to be Nick Bosa, Debo Samuel, Trey Lance. And the reason I went with Trey Lance over Jimmy Ward, which really I think that's the decision I made. Jimmy Ward to me was the guy I've been thinking about all along for this last pick. Is I just don't know how much longer Jimmy Ward is going to be playing at that elite
Jimmy
level.
Ward too. I was thinking Jimmy Ward.
I think Jimmy Ward is very worthy of being selected, but in the same sense, he does have a little bit of injury history recently, although he's bounced back from those injuries very well. If we're talking about long-term future, I would want to bet on Trey Lance before I bet on Jimmy Ward right now, especially because of positional value and because of the upside with Trey Lance. I think for me, the reason specifically is you can acquire a safety much, much easier than you can acquire a starting level quarterback. And with Trey Lance, I feel like I'm getting a highly talented starting level quarterback who I can build my team around for the long term, and is going to be a good short-term option as well. But I also think Brandon Ayuk is a really worthy candidate of this spot too. Vinny, are there any other players when you're thinking about this team that you would also be interested in?
Yeah, Ayuk was one. I think Elijah Mitchell was a guy too that I think teams could like if you want
If
to
not
build
for
a
his
team.
injury history, I think he would be very worthy of being right
Yeah.
up there too.
I think if not for his injury history either, I think Tart's a guy that a lot of teams could use and benefit from. And then Eric Armstead. I think that's just another guy that we kind of like.
I would put Emmanuel Mosley over. Well, would I?
No,
No,
I think Armstead's way better than Mosley.
he
I think
is.
he's way
I,
better than
I
him.
think the reason though I mentioned Mosley is because one, positional value, of course. And I guess I'm thinking of this through the 49ers lens, and I'm thinking of Chris Kusarik maybe a little too much. But yeah, I would have to agree with you. I think, and Eric mentioned that safety market is always crap in free agency. Yeah, you're right. I don't think it's a great market every single season, but you know what? I would actually say this season isn't one of those seasons. There's going to be guys available this offseason. Tyrann Mathieu is one of those guys that is available this offseason. Let me look at the other safety list. Justin Reed was another good example of someone. But Tart,
The safety market is just never good.
yeah, but I think this season especially, the safety market should be fairly. Devin McCourty, Marcus Williams, Marcus May,
It's better this year.
Quandre Diggs, Kareem Jackson, Keanu Neal, Lamarcus Joyner, Terrell Edmonds, Jabril Peppers. There are options this offseason. I'm not saying they're all great options, but Jesse Bates, I mean, he's probably not going to hit free agency, but yeah, I mean, there are options. Andrew Sendejo is getting up there in age. I'm just looking over the free agency list right now. But I think point being is that I would rather bet on trying to acquire any safety, even through the draft. Like, I think there are going to be lots of players up and coming. You see, like the Baylor player, for example, guys who can play multiple positions who are very versatile at that safety spot. So it's just much easier to acquire your franchise quarterback than it is that star safety. Much harder to acquire the quarterback than the safety. But safety isn't an easy position to acquire. And I think that's why, to me, if we're talking about that next guy, Vinny, can we agree it's Jimmy Ward? I think it has to be Jimmy Ward.
I think so.
Although Brandon Ayuk certainly, interesting discussion. But I really do think, man, Jimmy Ward is just such an underrated player. And when you add him to this 49ers team, he just makes life easier for the rest of that backfield, that secondary. So, man, Jimmy Ward, just such a valuable player for this team. And he just does so much.
I agree.
So, everyone, I think that's actually going to be it for us today. We're running up against an hour. This was a really fun live stream to do. I encourage everyone, subscribe below if you haven't already. And if you don't have a reason to subscribe, man, I'm in college, all right? I need the help. Go subscribe to my channel right now.
Yeah, I need help too.
Yes, go follow Vinny on Twitter. All of this is very free to do. It is not going to cost you any money. Also, one other thing, if you're a fan of mine and my work, you like the writing that I do, I'm starting my own newsletter, a weekly newsletter where I'm going to be putting all my content in one place so everybody can find that. So make sure you go follow me on Twitter, follow the newsletter. I believe it's up there already. If it's not, it'll be posted later today, this afternoon. But for everyone watching right now, go on YouTube, search Amin the Dream, subscribe to his channel, and make sure you're going to be watching about 2 hours when he and I are going to be on discussing everything 49ers. Also, go over to All 49ers Sports Illustrated. Go read my latest story about Trey Lance. I would really appreciate if you did. Some interesting discussion about his mobility. And in fact, I'll drop it in the comments before we get out of here. But for everyone watching, look out for next week as well. We will be on. Hopefully, there's some more traction moving forward. But look, this is kind of the dead part of the off season. I want to say it is what it is with content right now. But the Adam Schefter stuff, it just kind of goes to show you, Adam Schefter he didn't even put out a report, man. He was more just speculating about what was going on. And that just sent 49ers fans into a frenzy. But for everyone, I just found my latest All 49ers article. I'll let you guys go and read it there. I encourage you to go give it a read right now. I think I did a really good job on that. And I think there's some really interesting stuff in there.
Read it.
So That's going to be it for us today, though, everyone. We're just about at an hour, 59 minutes and a half right now. We'll be back next week. I'll have some more guests for Shanalytics next week. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video. And I'll see you guys very soon when I'm talking to Me in the Dream later. Make sure you look out for that. Peace out.
Peace.